in the heart of Jerusalem, a city steeped in history and faith, where the temple stood and the voices of the faithful echoed through the streets, a great drama was unfolding. It was here that religious leaders, desperate to maintain their control, conspired against the one who claimed to be the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. But little did they know, a secret disciple sat among them, watching and listening in silence. Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea was no ordinary man. A wealthy and influential member of the Jewish ruling council, the Sanhedrin, Joseph had power and prestige. He was a man of great stature, yet he found himself torn between his position in the council and the teachings of Jesus, which had captivated his heart. The Gospels describe him as a good and righteous man who had not consented to the decision to condemn Jesus to death. But despite his deep faith, Joseph was afraid. Joseph kept his faith secret, fearful of the consequences. He feared for his wealth, his status, and the repercussions from the powerful leaders around him. As Jesus was mocked, beaten, and cruelly nailed to the cross, Joseph's heart ached. He watched from the shadows, struggling with the conflict between his faith and his fear. But Jesus' suffering would not leave him unchanged. In the face of the Saviour's pain, Joseph's silence began to break. His inner conflict turned to resolve, and he knew he could no longer hide his allegiance to Jesus. In that moment, something inside him stirred. He could not remain a secret disciple any longer. At about the 9th hour, around 3 p.m., Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "It is finished!" His work on earth was done. With that final cry, he gave up his spirit. As the sky darkened, the earth itself trembled. The curtain of the temple fell from top to bottom. The ground shook, rocks split, and graves opened. In the chaos, even a hardened Roman centurion, a man used to death, declared in awe, "Truly, this was the Son of God." But even as this moment of divine power unfolded, the Jewish leaders remained focused on their grim mission, ensuring Jesus' death would be swift before the Sabbath began. The soldiers, under the orders of the authorities, went to break the legs of those crucified. But when they came to Jesus, they found that he was already dead. A soldier, just to be certain, pierced Jesus' side with a spear. Blood and water flowed out, evidence of the death that had already taken place. At that moment, something stirred within Joseph of Arimathea. He could not remain a spectator any longer. He had to act. Joseph went to Pilate, the Roman governor, to make an unexpected request. He boldly asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate, surprised that Jesus had already died so quickly, summoned the Roman centurion to confirm the death. When Pilate received confirmation, he granted Joseph the authority to take Jesus' body. Joseph's act was both brave and risky. He was a man of great influence, and yet his actions could cost him everything: his wealth, his position, his reputation. But he was no longer willing to remain in silence. He was ready to publicly declare his faith. Joseph was not alone in this act of courage. Another secret disciple, Nicodemus, who had once come to Jesus by night, joined him. Together, they brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds in total, for the proper burial of Jesus. With great care and reverence, they took the body of Jesus down from the cross. They wrapped his lifeless body in linen cloths, mixing the spices as was the custom in Jewish burials. The body of the Saviour, the Son of God, was treated with the utmost care as the two men prepared for the final act of love and honor. Joseph of Arimathea placed Jesus in his own new tomb, a tomb that had never been used before, cut from solid rock. This was the tomb where he himself had planned to be laid one day. But on that day, it became the final resting place for Jesus. With the body safely placed inside, Joseph and Nicodemus rolled a large stone across the entrance of the tomb. And as they left, the women who had followed Jesus from Galilee, Mary Magdalene among them, watched from a distance. They would be the first to return, to see the tomb where Jesus had been laid. The next morning, the religious leaders were restless. They remembered that Jesus had said he would rise again on the third day. Afraid that his disciples might steal the body and claim that he had risen, they went to Pilate to request a guard for the tomb. Pilate granted their request, and soldiers were stationed outside the tomb. The stone was sealed, ensuring no one could enter or leave. The tomb was secured, and the religious leaders believed they had done everything possible to prevent the impossible. But no earthly power could stop what was about to happen. On the third day, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the darkness, a mighty angel descended from heaven. The ground trembled beneath his feet. The guards stationed at the tomb shook in fear, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before them. The angel rolled away the stone with ease, revealing an empty tomb. Jesus was no longer inside. The women who had watched Joseph and Nicodemus bury Jesus returned, only to find the tomb empty. Their hearts must have been filled with confusion and fear. But an angel appeared to them and declared, "He is not here. He has risen, just as he said." The tomb that had once held the lifeless body of Jesus now stood empty. Joseph of Arimathea had risked everything to honor Jesus in death. Though once a secret disciple, his actions now publicly declared his faith. The tomb was empty, not because Joseph never used it, but because Jesus didn't stay in it. The Savior had risen from the dead, just as he promised. The stone had been rolled away, the tomb was empty, and the world would never be the same.